Call to order. This is Monday, July 31st, 2017. It's 4:30 p.m. in the Thomas J. Smith Council Chambers. I would just like to remind everybody again, this is a work session. This isn't a council meeting, so if discussion is desired from you, we will call on you. Otherwise, if you want to have a separate discussion, we're going to ask that you do. See your way out. We'd appreciate that. But I'm sure I didn't have to say that. We've got such a respectable group out there, but I just wanted to throw that anyways. We're going to roll right downhill tonight. We have some mayor's awards that will be given out. Thank you. Come on, man, come on. Help me out, help me out. We're going to do a discussion item first. We've got some people here from Otter Island, so we'll go ahead and address that first. Then we're going to roll downhill. So who's presenting that? Jim or Eric?
This came back as a result of your comments that you had last week that received from residents from Otter Island, expressing some concerns about the significant increases on the lease amounts over the course of the next 3 years. As you may remember, the council had approved those increases during the backside of the budget presentation this last year. That was really following the presentation from the Riverfront Commission in regards to making some alterations to the lease that we have, both in terms of trying to be a little more aggressive in how we make sure that there aren't problem properties on the island, as well as what the amount of the rentals were. Staff this wasn't something that was a staff issue, but it was from a Riverfront Commission specifically. And the council did agree to move forward on those. New rates went into effect for leases for July 1 this year, moving forward over the next several years. With the amount of people expressing opinions on or concerns about the increases, primarily from people who are current leaseholders out on Otter Island. This has been brought back at the request of some of you on council just to see if you had a desire to see some changes made as we move into the future.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. I did speak with some representatives that were going to be here tonight, and they were going to pick out a couple of spokesmen. So are those couple of spokesmen here tonight that had anything they want to? Mr. Walsh, come on down. The lovely lady next to you went like this. She went.
Hi, Charlie Walsh, 1619 River, Burlington, chairman of the Riverfront Advisory. I didn't know we got a commission now, so I take that as a compliment. You did get minutes in February on our meeting. I do want to tell you that the meeting was not a quorum, and it did get voted on, but it shouldn't have been voted on because there wasn't enough people there. I was not there. They did talk about it. They made a recommendation to you, and I think the recommendation that they made was not quite the same as what you made. So some of you were on the riverboat that we went up 2 years ago or last year? Can't really remember which year. The recommendation was that some of the cabins are in totally bad shape. And we felt that there should be some inspection by the city to improve it. And I believe we talked to staff about that, and they stated that there wasn't really a law in the book to be able to do anything with the recommendation of if it was over 50% torn down or something, that you could do anything about it. So that was kind of dropped. But after listening to some of the people at the public meeting, 2 weeks ago or something like that, we had another meeting, and we felt that maybe they were a little bit too high. Last year, the ice really did some major damages to properties up there. And it wasn't a unanimous decision on the Riverfront Advisory that we would recommend that you take another look and lower it, but that was our last meeting that we had. Do you have any questions for me or from other members?
So are you suggesting then, right now it's set at, it's going from-
75 per,
goes from 250 to 325, or is the committee suggesting we stay there or not
Just-
do it, or?
maybe take a $25 increase at this time, but nothing like the 75. We felt that it's still a bargain, even at 325.
So,
But
okay,
right now, after all the damage that was done last year, maybe it wasn't the year to do it
so
at
then,
all.
then what about the out years, the next 2 years? It was set to increase, so
Just look at
Just drop
that next
that.
year.
Just
Yeah,
do 1 year at a time.
yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Matt, did you have something?
Yeah, Matt Reeker, the 912.
No, you're good, man.
Charlie and I sit on the Riverfront Advisory Committee together. And I guess the financial amount.
Did you give your name and address? Sorry.
Yeah, Matt
Okay,
Reeker,
okay.
912 Hageman. The financial amount is irrelevant. The whole purpose of this was to try and encourage people to have more commitment to their lot, to clean up the lots. If you're gonna make a $25 million commitment to the riverfront, that island's part of that riverfront. So as far as I'm concerned, we could have no fees, but this council's gotta figure out what they're gonna do to get that island cleaned up. So really, that's the biggest issue we've got. If you guys have got better ideas on how to get that done, then that's fine. If we gotta raise the price to $5,000 in order to get people to have more commitment, then that's what we gotta do. But the amount isn't what we really are arguing about, so.
Okay.
The goal of our committee was to come up with a plan to advise you guys to figure out how to go about cleaning up that island. That was one of the tools that we saw. You guys have got other ideas, and that'd be the best.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Okay?
Thanks, man. Council,
We'll say Paul Vorwerk has done a lot of work. There's some series of pictures over here. Every lot, from 2 pictures, one at low river stage and the other one at the high river stages. So I want to compliment Paul and his wife on all that work they did there to provide that for us.
I believe that we did give you photos of the last
Yeah.
riverfront too,
Right.
that
Yes.
we
Yeah.
had,
Right.
so.
again, this is a work session, so obviously we can't put anything in, or decide on anything, or vote on anything, obviously, but I just want to say that I spoke with some people that are, many of the river rats and people that spend a lot of time on the river, that have cabins down there, and after the conversation I had, their concern was, one, when it comes to future increases, that we don't put it on a consent agenda. And I'll leave that because I could have easily not had that done. The reason why I didn't see any issue with it personally was because nobody said anything about it. You know, we didn't hear anything. Well, sometimes people do miss reading the paper, people have active lives, so I can understand and respect that. As far as I'm concerned, I do think a increase is due. The amount of increase that I was satisfied with was $25 increase, and to revisit this next year, that'll give everybody a chance to kind of get their thoughts together, and maybe we can get a better plan by the time we revisit this next year on how we're going to keep those islands in good shape, not just for now, but for the future. So I'm just throwing that out there. Council, anybody else have any thoughts?
I think what we have already done, what's already, started happening, I think is fine. I don't think that's too much to ask, with the increase. I think it really does show how much somebody really cares about their property. And I think that's gonna be the best way, evidently, it's gonna be the best way we have of cleaning up that island. Because what are our other options? Can we go in and do inspections and say, clean this up in 30 days, or we're tearing it down? But we can't, correct?
I hadn't heard, actually, yet the complaint, and I don't know, maybe I'm misreading what was done. There are some lease terms that were modified to
Yeah,
allow
right.
for inspection process and a process for having cleanup occur as a part of that rental agreement. I haven't heard that being what the complaint has been
I
about.
wasn't gonna do that.
It's the amount of the fee increase, which you could make an adjustment on without impacting whether we have the ability to have the other items
Right.
included or not.
So that was part of the lease agreement, was the inspections were allowed.
I think I like it the way it is, the way it's been agreed upon.
Okay. Again, the only thing I was getting was on the increase. Go ahead.
So I have to agree with the mayor and the Riverfront Advisory Chair that we look at a $25 increase for this year. We take another look at it next year and decide with more input how we're going to take care of the dilapidated buildings that are out there now as per the request of the advisory board, and how we're going to ensure that in the future we don't get stuck with having to take care of more of them. And if it takes some modification of the lease or increase in funding. I think the one thing that's important for me is, it's been mentioned a couple of times that we've had copies of the Riverfront Advisory Committee minutes. I haven't seen any for over a year. And I don't know if I'm just missing them or if they're, or if they're somewhere on, that I need to look them up rather than have them put in the reader file or sent to us, so. Pardon me?
I can get you a copy of this, I had all of them.
I didn't hear what you said.
She can get you a copy of those.
Okay.
They do get submitted, Dave, I know Dave
All right.
submits them.
So maybe if we had those, it would have, we wouldn't have gone as far as we did. I mean, I've been out there several times, and I've been on the sandbar, and I've been on tours over the years with the Riverfront Advisory Committee, so it's not like I don't know what's going on out there or what I've seen, so if the couple more of the council members would support that, I would recommend that we that we modify that lease at the next council meeting to, for the $25 increase for next year, and then we take another look at it, council take another look at it earlier in the year, and invite the interested parties in to discuss it. And there may be some very good ideas from the people that have the leases out there on how to control it. The only other thing I have to say is, I was told by a party that there was one of the leasers walks around with a gun on his hip and 2 large dogs, and has told some of the people on the sandbar that they're on private property and that they have to leave. And that's pretty disturbing, in fact, that we don't have any jurisdiction out there for police officers and it's a very long response on the part of the Des Moines County Sheriff's Department, so.
There have been multiple complaints about that. The beach is, the lots are rented for the specific lot. So anyone who has a lot has the right to their piece of property. It's hard to see where property lines are down there, but the beach on the south end is public land available to anyone as well. I mean, anyone has as much right to it as the folks who are leasing the specific lot on the site. In terms of our police department, you do provide service out there in an arrangement with Des Moines County?
Yes.
Would you like to come up and address what we do with that?
Yeah, we work closely with the sheriff's department, of course, with their rescue boat. And we have the rescue boat that's housed at the fire department, but we do not actively send an officer up there to patrol that island at any given point in time. It's basically a response to that island for any emergencies. Or if someone was to call and say something is happening up there, we would launch the boat, our boat, which would be occupied by police officers that are, I guess, certified to operate the boat, and head up to Otter Island to resolve whatever issue was there. And the response time would be timely because we'd have to get the boat from the fire department, launch it, and then head up there. So there'd be some time involved. You're exactly right.
Right, thanks, Major.
You bet.
So basically what we're suggesting is to modify the lease agreement by eliminating the 2 out years and
Right.
pick either, if you're suggesting 25, or I wouldn't be bothered by leaving it at 75 like it is, but for the next year, but at least eliminating the 2 out years.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay.
So I think we have a consensus, basically.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess there is a consensus for that, so.
Okay.
We can bring it back with a resolution modifying the term to the one-year lease or fee increase. And I think that we may put in there with a $25 increase over last year's fee as a starting point based off of the conversation, but recognizing that that is not necessarily where you may be. It may be that you want it to stay at the 325, but until you get to that vote point, I have no idea. And you can modify it to
works.
any other figure in between.
Yeah, that works.
That
Sounds
works,
good.
that's fine.
Okay. Awesome.
As long
Anybody?
as the 2 out years are eliminated.
Right.
Okay. Anybody
Well,
that came?
it'll be set up to where the 2 out years would stay at that same fee structure. That if you do 275, it would be that for the out year absent a change from you.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. That accomplishes.
One other thing, yes, sir.
Just to clarify something, that the Riverfront Advisory Committee did not have the lease prior to you approving it. We got it afterwards, so it was already written, so there wasn't a whole lot we could do about it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Charlie.
Thank you guys for coming down. If you guys want to get on out of here, you're certainly welcome and able. Okay, we're going to move downhill now.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Otter Islanders.
I figured there'd be more joy on faces leaving. All right, let's see if we can do that. Number 2, we have a public hearing, consideration of a sale of property locally known as 1309 South 10th Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Mr. Tisland.
Map Hirschham property. This is one we acquired some time ago. It's something the school district had expressed interest in quite a while ago as well through their building trades program, looking to acquire a property from the city and work with their students through their building trades program. Finally, we're able to arrange for the superintendent to get through the property, and they did express interest in acquiring it for that program. So this does have a public hearing, but the conditions of the sale would be the property at 1309 South 10th shall be transferred to the Burlington Community School District for the purpose of educating school students in building trades. Property at 1309 South 10th is being gifted to the above public purpose as allowed by Iowa Code 364.73. We had a discussion on this and some other programs, well, how long ago that was, a number of months ago, trying to rehab properties and get them in the hands of owner-occupied, trying to improve neighborhoods, income-qualified individuals, working with various community groups to accomplish that, and this is one mechanism to doing that.
Council?
This is awesome.
Yeah.
We definitely need, in this area, need these trades people desperately.
Amen to that. Okay.
So who becomes the owner of this house after?
School district becomes the owner. They'll work with their building trades program to rehab it, and then they
And then when they're done with it, you're going to transfer it to,
We're transferring it to the school, and then they're,
It's
Then it's up to
It's
them.
up to them. They've
Yeah.
talked about the potential for someone, a veteran, who's in a position where they don't have the ability to make payments on it in a typical structure, or a single parent. They've talked about a few different options for that. I'm not exactly sure where they'll end up on it, but that's been part, I think, and I think it's still a work in progress and where they'll ultimately end up being.
somewhat similar but a little different. When we sold the home to Regional Planning
Regional
Commission,
Planning.
they're fixing it up and they're selling it on their own to an income qualified individual.
Right.
But we transfer it to them, they do the rehab and they own it and sell it.
thank you, Mayor, I'm sorry.
No problem. We good? Number 3, motion for preliminary adoption of the second reading of an ordinance vacating and selling a portion of Oak Street right-of-way located east of Bluff Road, Burlington, Iowa. Mr. Tisdale.
This again was Oak Street right away located just west of, or east of Bluff Road. Request from the property owners adjacent Burlington Truck Rail to vacate this based on access to the site. It is a steep grade there and doing rail improvements. They desired to have the access on the north side of 922 and provide an easement back to the city for access for the Burlington Municipal Water Works storage facility and pump there. We did have the legal description for the vacation. That did include the area further back and also into Oak Street. The surveyors just provided the legal description for the actual transfer. So the vacation area will be larger than the actual transfer. And so in your packet, there is an area to amend the legal, Exhibit B by adding the vacated portion legal description to that as well. So that vacated portion is not as large as, or the vacated portion is larger than the area being transferred. There are a couple following items that maybe Nick could talk about as well, but again, this is being transferred to Burlington Truck Rail. They're providing an alternative easement for access to the city and waterworks on the north side of the vacated right-of-way, and then working with the city on a cost-sharing agreement relative to improvements at the agency railroad crossing.
Is that the price for the vacation is that they contribute, so that's why there's no price listed
Yeah,
here?
and Nick can talk about that. Those are the following two items.
We're getting into item 4 and 5 now. 4 is the actual, sorry, I don't mean to try and run the meeting for you. Item 4 is the agreement with Burlington Truck Rail, of which item 1 discusses $53,500, which is half the price of the Agency Street crossing. That would be the price for the vacation of Oak Street. And then I have a map here showing, unfortunately, this item didn't make it to your agenda. It's still with our attorney discussing the legal description of the easements that we will be granted from Burlington Truck Rail, not only just for the city of Burlington, but for Waterworks. I'll give that to Eric here. The image kind of doesn't really depict on what's really going on as far as the kind of the raise. So we'll have two easements that come along with this agreement, one east to west across the property, and then one kind of at an angled fashion. In where there's that throated area, there's actually slag through there, and that's the easiest route to get there. There's kind of a raised hill along what is city property. And then you see this chunk down here at the bottom, and that's part of what Eric is talking about. That all that will be vacated but retained by the city. The other stuff will be conveyed to Burlington Truck Rail. So the agreement has all those exhibits in there. That is one, the cost share on agency, but then also the easements. And then there's some conveyance exhibit too. So, and actually item 5 is exhibit D, but it has to be approved separately as an easement agreement, which is these two easements. So hopefully that makes all sense, but they're all tied together.
Appreciate you covering that. Anybody got any questions for Nick? Jim, anything to add?
No, it's, just would say the railroad has been very good to work with as we've gone through this process. Them being willing to pay a portion of the cost on the Agency Street project. They don't have a requirement, this is our project. But we were able to do something for them as well that helps to clean up some of their concerns and still maintain our need to be able to make sure that the water department can get back and do the things they need to do. So it's been a good partnership, and what the shoreline has done for us on this we're pretty happy with. I hope they are too.
It's good to hear that we're working good with the railroad, so it's always good.
So
The short line.
You know, let's not get hung up.
clarify, what do you think? Should council waive that second reading or no?
I don't see any
I don't see
reason.
any reason why not.
Yeah, I'd do it.
Because 4 and 5 get approved right off the bat, right? So, yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Jim?
Number 6, resolution approving the final plat of Kofevivi Lot Subdivision. Mr. Tisland,
Two-lot subdivision.
please
off
tell us about Kofevivi.
Kofefi Lot subdivision, or however it's pronounced. 2 lots south of West Avenue. The former property there, 2803 West Avenue, formerly had the large house and garage as seen on the south
Oh, yeah.
image there that were torn down this summer. So they're subdividing that into 2 buildable lots. It is a very large lot right now, nearly 2 acres in size. So they plan to subdivide it in 2 separate lots, one 1.16 acres and one 0.84 acres, so still very large lots. Hopefully see new construction on those lots afterwards.
You guys good?
Yeah, glad to see it.
Yeah, me too.
Kofif.
So are the neighbors.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, number 7, resolution approving an agreement with Howard R. Green Company for the sewer master plan.
Mr. Don?
You coming up to do that?
Oh, here.
Good evening. Bob Wright, the city engineering manager. So, put some slides together for you. Go ahead to the next. There you go. So, again, the problem statement here really is that we have the current infrastructure for all of our sewer. We have a GIS mapping showing locations, but we don't have definite details on the constraints, what the capacities are. So when we get into new developments out on, with the map there out to the west with Flint Ridge or to the south around the airport, we really don't have the means of discussing what our capabilities are, what new infrastructure is needed. And so going from there, it's just identifying for the Hawkeye Basin, the Cascade Basin, and the others on developing really a sewer asset management tool. So if you want to go to the next page there. So again, wrote the scope of work. HR Green had responded to that. We'll be performing inflow and infiltration analysis, developing existing and future flow projections. They have an asset condition and rating system similar to what we have on roads for the pavement index. So we'll be assessing the condition of all of our existing infrastructure. We'll do hydraulic and I don't know how the difference between those two, hydraulic modeling and hydraulic, yes. And then integrating that with our GIS data. So the current GIS data that we're working with Des Moines County on, we'd have that all mapped, color-coded graphically, what the condition is, the metadata behind that showing what the constraints and capacities are, and putting together kind of a 20-year CIP funding plan based on our current sewer rates and what we deem an annual budget for maintenance and new infrastructure. So again, the cost from HR Green was just under $400,000. Our budget, again, at $400,000. And again, I think the takeaway there, it's more the title, Sewer Master Plan, a little misleading. There's a lot of work, a lot of engineering going behind this to create an asset management tool for us. So, and I think the last page is just some examples of what that'll look like on GIS, color coding it, the hydraulic analysis, and putting together some capacity and constraints. So when we're talking to new development projects, we know what the need is. So, any questions to that? Thank you.
Good job.
One thing I'd mention, I don't know if you have anything, Nick, but one thing I'd mention on this is that, is we're going through integrated planning with the help of Environmental Protection Agency. We'll be doing that over the course of this next year. We have, they'll be on site August 8 and 9. We're gonna be looking at, they're looking more from a stormwater perspective, but they're keeping all of this in mind in terms of what is our overall sewer system needs, as well. How are we going to be able to prioritize what projects need to happen when? You know, we're under our CSO order. Typically, we end up with orders on our 5-year NPDES permit for things that need to occur. We want to make sure that as they take a look from an integrated planning perspective of what should happen when, we want to be able to potentially modify our CSO order, but we also want to make sure that we keep our whole system in mind. What's going on with this sewer master plan is going to look at things such as lift stations. The Interceptor, Mississippi Interceptor is a major project that needs to occur as an example. We have other areas where we know that we have constraints within the system. Those are capital needs that need to occur too. We want to make sure that those are all put into one prioritization scheme. And so the sewer master plan and the integrated plan we're hoping to get them working enough together that they give us what we need to be able to work with the state on more of a long-term basis for modifications to our CSO order. And what seems to be the goal here, part of it is instead of being on a 5-year NPDES permit, but we might have some of those permit rules that are written for us specifically more on that 50 to 20-year timeline. It gives us a little bit longer-term planning tool. What we're going to find, I know we're going to find, is that we can't afford to do everything that needs to be done in that 20-year basis. And my concern is that we have some way that we can make sure that we are getting stuff that needs to be done for day-to-day operations put into our capital needs along with the CSO work that needs to be done.
I think what really did it for me was when I first got here, we had some issues at a regulator chamber. And it was just right when Silgan Manufacturing had come online. And we were trying to work through the problems on whether or not, what the issue was. Was it the regulator chamber? Was it because they were putting out too much? And we didn't have the answer for it. I said, well, what is our capacity? And we didn't have the answer for that. What's our capacity limitations at the regulated chamber? And we don't know those answers. So I think the sewer master plan was something that, if we're going to continue to grow and expand as a community, we have to have a general direction of what our limitations are, what are recommended fixes to be able to handle that added, but then also how do we deal with what we currently have? For the last, I don't know how many years, we've been working on separating our sewer system, but not a lot of attention has been paid towards fixing those sewers. That's the reason why you see a lot of backups in currently separated areas. And the hope is for this sewer master plan is to take all the information that is out there for our sewer needs for the next 20 years and put them in a CIP list that will help us prioritize what our needs are and what we can afford. And so I think that it is highly essential for us to grow as a community to have this work done. $400,000 to have a sewer master plan done seems like a lot of money, but it's a year's worth of work for HR Green to go through and digest our sewer system. One of the related topics is, when we were talking about the development on South 14th Street, whether or not we had capacity at that lift station. Technically we have capacity during dry weather flow, but the problem was we didn't have wet weather flow. We're going to go through with flow meters as part of the plan and figure out what areas need to be fixed and try and isolate those down. And I think that that will help a lot of our issues. So I can answer any other questions on it, but I think that the sewer master plan is highly essential for us moving forward.
Sure makes sense.
Okay, do anything about the price?
Well, I've already done some stuff about the price, so without trying to cut too much on scope, try to dial back some of it. The initial number was higher than this, but I feel fairly comfortable in what we have for scope versus what we're paying for a price.
Appreciate your hard work.
Thank you, Nick, Bob, thank you.
We good? Okay. Number 8, resolution approving lease agreement between the City of Burlington and Megan Osteen Swim Technique for use of Dankworth Park Pool.
This is the lease agreement as has been discussed previously at some work sessions for construction of the dome or bubble over the swimming pool for use on a year-round basis. Just a couple items can go through here that are representatives of the swim club here as well, but the lease period shall begin one day following the end of the city pool season and continue through including April 30th of the following year. Lessees shall be permitted to operate the pool premises at their sole and exclusive cost during the lease period. They would be permitted to construct a bubble or dome over the pool, including any sporting lighting, other equipment. The bubble shall be removed by the lessee each year prior to April 30th. Lessees shall be permitted to make improvements to the pool house, pool, and grounds, subject to prior approval by the city in order to allow for use of the pool and pool house during the lease period. The pool house is not a conditioned space currently, so there will be some needed upgrades at that facility. For use of the pool premise, the lessee shall pay the city a monthly payment of $2,500 beginning September 1st, 2018, and continue on the first of each month, including April 30th of the following year. As we had in the previous discussion, they had requested a reduced lease amount or zero lease amount for the first 2 years for under item 7, repair and replacement of the pool deck. They're going to be doing the pool deck improvements initially before constructing the pool. That was in our CIP budget and the amount of $100,000 in FY '22. They're going to be covering that cost and ask for a reduction in lease amounts, but thinking that could be used as a grant match, looking at some of the requirements, it looks like it might be easier for them to pay that amount and then have a separate resolution by council paying back that amount or paying a certain amount towards the group. And maybe they can talk a little bit more about that one. So we get through a few things here. Swimming lessons, lessee would be provided on a year-round basis during the lease period and non-lease period, the swimming lesson classes for the public. So they'd be responsible all year round, even during the summer for swimming lessons. During the city operation of the pool, the fees for swimming lessons shall be reasonably comparable to other local lesson fees and shall be approved by city council. So it's stated in here. Lessee shall be responsible at its sole expense for the entire cost of construction of the dome and any supporting or additional structures, and further maintain the dome and all associated equipment at their cost. They should provide necessary staff for operation of the pool during their lease period. They are responsible for payment of all utilities during the lease period. Under item J, in section 9, lessee shall receive approval from the city council before any grant application monies are utilized for pool improvements or for the dome structure and associated equipment, in order to hold the city harmless for repayment of the grant monies due for failure of the lessee to satisfy the terms of the grant. That's one of the discussions about having to pay back grant funds should obligations not be met. Item K, Southeast Iowa Swim Club shall retain ownership of the dome and related equipment. City shall provide the pool in normal condition upon completion of the non-lease period after the city pool season. Any items that come up that are not budgeted that exceed $10,000 do require approval of the city council. And then some other language here, I guess, on applicable law and termination and limitation of the lessee. But that's kind of a brief summary of the lease. If you have any other questions, and again, the swim club group is here as well to be able to answer any questions and go over their terms as well.
Council, do we have questions?
Does this address what happens since we're filtering all year round instead of just the summertime, the expenses with the filters, et cetera? Is that part of their responsibility, or is that ours as the owners, or?
Ours as the owners to maintain the pool, which would be filters as well. Their payment of $2,500 a month would cover, during their period, would intended to cover any
Is intended
expenses
to cover
for,
that sort of thing?
yeah, improvements to pumps, filters, et
Chemicals and
cetera.
all that kind of stuff?
Chemicals are their cost, utilities are their cost during their season.
We don't have, not knowing what our capital costs would be on our own, nor how it would impact the normal wear and tear. The $2,500 a month is just designed to try to be able to cover those kind of things that we know are gonna be there, we just don't know how much.
How much?
Is Southeast Iowa Swim Club a third party, or?
Maybe Ryan could discuss that a little bit more. I said maybe the group might be able to better identify who the parties are with this.
So basically Southeast Iowa Swim Club is, we're a nonprofit. We're the local club that is kind of, we're part of the Y, we're part of the USA, but we're just the local swim club. So the leasee is Megan Osting Swim Technique, Most LLC. That is the USA team out of Cedar Rapids and will be a satellite location for them. So we are the third party, I guess, is what we would be.
And your role is raising the funds for the dome and securing those funds for the dome.
Basically, we're coming through and we're gonna go and raise the funds for the dome. We're gonna own the dome because if she were to ever pull out, we can start our own team here. The dome stays in Burlington. If we're asking Burlington to, basically, if we're gonna fund it through Burlington businesses, then we're going to keep it in Burlington. She can't just take that dome and go open something somewhere else. So it'll be our dome to stay here. If we close, or the city's dome, if they want it at that point and we aren't gonna use it, the dome will be in Burlington. So.
And we're talking about a bubble type thing that's air inflated? It's not a,
That's a smaller bubble, but.
yeah, okay, that's just what I had in mind. That's what I had pictured.
Could you have
Okay.
Eric put that up on the screen? Wow.
All right.
And is this going to be inside the current fence or outside, or do they have to move the fence, or?
The fence is gonna be moved to the outside, just a few feet out
Okay.
from where it is now.
But I don't think that's a bad idea. I kind of like that. Gives you more room than in the
Yeah.
summertime, too.
There is some, and we talked about this, but there's gonna be some, in order to winterize it, we're gonna have to put in some shut-offs and do some different things in order to winterize the plumbing for the,
Right.
basically the baby pool, we're gonna have to winterize that, but that is,
Yeah.
That's part of what we're proposing with this
all
project.
that's,
That'd be part
all
of this
that's
project.
factored in.
Okay.
Any other questions, guys?
So as far as timing of the project, you guys would operate swim lessons starting this year. Construction of the dome would not go until next year, 2019, or 2018. And
We would intend to put it
would
up
do
in September
the
of 18.
deck work either this,
In
well,
the spring,
potentially
as much
next
as we can
spring.
in the spring before the season, and then whatever's left, finish it up after the normal summer season. So we put it up September to October at the latest of 18.
Okay. You guys good?
I hope you work it out.
You guys are crazy, man. All right. This is awesome. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, number 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Start with number 9, a resolution awarding contract for the new law enforcement center, bid package number 1, general construction.
What project. Perry and I met earlier this week, or last week, was it? Yeah, last week, after the bids were opened.
Who's Perry?
Perry Hines works with Carly Nelson, and very helpful, wonderful. They've been helpful. We've been meeting twice a month, every 2 weeks usually, and talking with the architects. And Perry's been involved with that, putting these packages together and proposing that they be let out for bid, which y'all are aware of. I think it's been presented previously here. So those bids came back. There were a total of 7 packages that were bid, and they did the bid opening. Major Grimshaw was there, I was not there, so that's why Perry and I met to kind of go over some of these things, and actually it came in what we had originally budgeted for each one of those packages. It came in total over all 7 of them about, I think it's probably $25,000 less than what we had thought it was going to be overall, over the total of the 7 bids. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Great. So
Overall, we're under budget.
overall, we're under budget, and there's some things that, like, one of the bid packages is the site work, and it's bid package number 7 that we're probably may hold off and ask for a rebid later on, just for the fact that we're not quite sure what's going to be done with the parking structure, depending on how it goes through this process, and we have time, because that would be like the last phase of the construction would be the site work outside, which is basically the parking garage outside, and trying to make that fit within the money that's been allotted for this
Right.
project overall. 'Cause we're
The
not-
chief brought that, yeah.
Yeah, we're not gonna go over budget or what was allotted to us for this project, so.
Perry? We're going to end this under budget?
I definitely think so. I mean, we've got a very strong contingency. I mean, we've discussed that earlier. When you're doing a remodel, you know, on a new construction, you may go in 5. On a remodel, we suggest 10. But I'm excited to say, I mean, with our bid under budget, what we're monitoring through the design development discussions that I've had with the the prime contractors, I had made some phone calls in the last couple of days just to do interviews. But I'm confident that we've got a good project here and a good team.
Perry, I just want to tell you this, no pressure, but Burlington is counting on you. All right.
That sounds like pressure.
Just a little bit. That's all right.
All right. Well, we believe in you, Perry. We believe in you. You guys have any other questions on this?
But,
Good work, though.
talk about pressure, you've had that on chief and major all along here.
Okay. well,
I'm
let's-
excited about this, guys. When do you think we're gonna start?
We did talk to the bank, and I know that they will be out August 7th, so we've kind of been working out the details of when we actually take possession. I think Perry has some contractors that have been asking the same question of when they can get in and get going. So as soon as, and the bank is confident that August 7th is the date, and then I believe that weekend, I think that'll be the last day. The weekend before that is when they'll actually move, and we'll take possession probably August 7th, August 8th, somewhere around there, and then go.
We're getting close. We're
A
getting
week
close.
from today. That's good.
Yes,
Great.
hopefully.
Perry, you mentioned, or you're mentioning with the last one of these bids that you may want to rebid it. How does that work? You award it now and then you can
Yeah.
rebid it?
So, I made the recommendation to the team that we take a look at that and rebid it. During the design phase, we cut out quite a bit on that exterior site work, because we knew we had aspects inside the building, and through the estimate, we were, trimming. So when this bid came in, knowing that that work's gonna be done in spring, especially a lot of site contractors are just really busy. They're out working, they have to come in and do estimates. I would have liked to seen some more bid participation for that bid package. I think we probably could have came under that or on that more, close to that $60,000 budget. But now that we've come in under budget, once we go through, the first couple months gonna be demolition. We're gonna find those unknowns. We're gonna have a better of idea where we stand with our contingency come December. We can possibly look at other options, like a screen wall has been brought up, ways to maybe have some controlled access to that parking area. We can relook at that and then rebid that. So we could essentially, we're gonna throw out those bids and choose not to award that, and then redesign and rebid it.
So your point, Jim, then, is that we should not be approving this item 7, then?
If you're looking to rebid.
And I think Chief Beard, he'll be back next week, and him and I will discuss that when he gets back. But that would be my recommendation, and between myself, Major Grimshaw, and Perry, that had discussed this last week, that would be our recommendation, is not to award that number 7 package and award the rest, and leave that number 7 one to be rebid at a later date. And hopefully, we can accomplish that.
Boy, I hope you remember that, you guys. You gotta remember that.
We'll try to remind you too.
Okay, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys good?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Major. Thank you, Perry. Wow.
I'm just gonna read
At
through
last.
these and then whatever else extra you've got. Number 10 is a resolution awarding contract for the new law enforcement center bid package number 2, floor finishes. Do we need to talk about any of it? I'm just gonna roll through them. Number 11 is resolution, this is all the new police department. Resolution awarding contract for the new law enforcement center bid package number 3, the fire protection sprinklers.
Well, Mayor, why don't you read who got the awards,
Okay.
or who will get the awards when we approve it?
It's in-
Well, you don't have that in front of you.
You-
Flooring finishes was Wright Smith's Flooring America, $197,452.
Okay, who's fire protection sprinklers?
Fire protection sprinklers, there were 4 bids. The low bid was Tri-State Automatic Sprinkler for $119,765.
Number 12 was a resolution awarding contract for the new law enforcement center bid package for plumbing.
Low bid was Frank Millard and Company, $125,000.
Frank Miller. Number 13 is resolution awarding contract for the new law enforcement center bid package number 5, HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Brockway Mechanical and Roofing, $125,722. That was considerably under all the other bids.
Keeping it local.
Yes.
Number 14, resolution awarding contract for new law enforcement center bid package number 6, electrical.
Moorfield Electric out of Fort Madison, $721,000. And they bid the alternate of $71,400. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And then number 15 is resolution awarding contract for the new law enforcement center bid package number 7, exterior site work and parking lot renovations. And we covered that already. That's going to be a rebid. Okay.
We didn't mention the cost on the bid package number 1 for the general
Break it out.
contract. That was Frank Miller too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
$1,300,000.
$1,300,000 roughly.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Are we good? Okay. Moving on to the proposed consent agenda for the 7th. The first is a resolution approving nuisance abatements for various properties. Any problems there, gentlemen and lady?
No, there are too many.
Yeah,
There are too many.
yeah, I'll tell you, I just got busted up again today
7 pages.
over nuisances, man. Okay, number 2 is a resolution amending the contract for engineering services for Phase 1 south of the Flint River Trail. Mr. Tisland.
So if you recall, when we awarded bid on this, we were significantly under budget for this project. So we had some remaining funds, local funds and grant funds that could be utilized. Based on our requirements for doing any alternate work, we have approximately $230,000 remaining in project and grant funds allowable for construction of the trail. These grant funds would need to be utilized or potentially lost or not be able to use going forward. So we wanted to try and make use of the funds while we have them based on securing them previously. In order to do new work on the trail, we need additional engineering services in the amount of approximately $40,000. We have $18,667 existing funds available towards that.
Can you give me that number again, Mr. Tisland?
It's in the resolution. We have, we need $40,000 for engineering services. We have $18,667 remaining from the original budgeted amount. So need just over $21,000 in order to complete engineering to go out for bid and do design, observation, construction. So we've identified funds through the CIP that could be utilized for that out of, primarily out of hotel motel funds. We've already come in under budget on some tractors for parks that we purchased for $6,000. And then a couple items that estimating based on preliminary bids and quotes coming in under golf carts and forestry bucket truck, and then using trail maintenance funds to try and come up with additional funds for engineering so that we can utilize these grant funds and not lose them. They are time sensitive and it is difficult to acquire these funds, so we want to make sure we're making use of them the best we can so that we don't have, so that reduces our future requirement for the Flint River Trail. We have funding in FY21 and FY22 for future construction on this, and hopefully that'll reduce that cost down the road as well, so.
If you haven't been out walking on the new trails, you're really missing out. You're really missing some good exercise. You get to view the beautiful creation in the sky. It's you got to get out there and check it out. So if you haven't been out to the trails, you're really missing a great opportunity to have a good time, and it's fantastic. Anything else on that? Okay. All right. Antoinette, you don't have a plug? We'll wait till the end. I know you got one. Number 3 is a resolution authorizing the filing of an application for resource enhancement of protection REAP program for construction and improvements at the North Gorge Trail. Mr. T?
So this is a application again for REAP funds that city qualifies for up to $150,000 for REAP funds through the program. Does not require local match. This would be a self-contained project with no other grant funds sought or anything, but looking to do additional construction and improvements at the North Gorge Trail, working with the county on this project as well. A lot of the project currently is on the city property and goes over into the county area as well, working with Des Moines County Conservation. I think there's approximately 3 to 4 miles constructed currently. Looking to continue that. Their ultimate goal is to get 10 miles of trail here, which would allow races or different events to be, sanctioned events to be held at the North Gorge Trail. This again is just allows application for continued development and construction of the North Gorge Trail through the REAP funds. If awarded, we would need to enter into an agreement with Des Moines County, a maintenance agreement, since it is on city and county property. The county's not this project doesn't fit under the county's application, I guess what they deem eligible for applications. It fits more in the city application, so we're the lead agency on the grant application, but would need some sort of maintenance agreement with the county based on the grant.
And how does this work with Americans with Disability Act? How does that all fit?
How does it work with that?
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that a little bit more to get you a better answer.
Way to go, Jim, asking tough questions and stuff.
It's a natural trail that, yeah, I'll have to
So
check.
there's, I mean, the requirements are different for that sort of
Yeah,
area than it would be
there's single
for-
track trails
yeah.
versus a multimodal
Okay.
trail, so.
All right.
But that's something I can get a little more information for you on.
I guess it's an off-the-wall question, Mayor.
We'll let it slide tonight. If you haven't been out to the North Gorge, I was just out there last week with my grandson and my daughter. It's fantastic. Guys are out there riding all over the place. I've got my bike. Okay, I'm not gonna start fibbing. I don't have my bike and I'm not gonna be riding it, but it's awesome. So again, just throwing a plug out there. If you have not had a chance to go out there and see this, if you're a bike rider, it's awesome. You need to get out there and do some riding. Summer times, we're running out of time, so it's gonna be some winter time.
One note on the trail, there is some areas that are biking and hiking or walking, and then there are some areas that are biking only. So from the trailhead, you can go for a hike or a walk as well as bike, but there are some sections that are designated just for bikers so that as they get a little more difficult. So encourage all users out there.
Are we good? Number 4 is a resolution amending the permanent encroachment agreement with the Art Guild of Burlington, Inc. for encroachment into city right-of-way adjacent to the property located at 301 Jefferson Street, Burlington, Iowa.
This was previously approved for art installation on Jefferson Street. After looking at the site and some of the street trees in the area, it was going to probably require that tree to be dramatically trimmed or possibly removed. There is a lot of area on the east side of the property there at 301 Jefferson that would allow for that installation as well. So the amendment would allow the placement on the east side of the property on North Third Street right away instead of Jefferson Street right away.
So do you have a picture of the statue of Annie, or are they just gonna leave that as a surprise?
Similar to the design before, kind of the palettes, the painting palettes and art sculpture.
I like that he just ignored that one.
Whatever, Tuan. Are we good?
Yep.
Number 5 is resolution approving travel and training policies. Mrs. Stuker.
In your packet is the actual resolution and policy. This was last updated, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. So basically, what we've changed is we removed all the wording that talked about advances for travel. We've stopped doing any advances. It's all reimbursement after the travel is done. We just were finding that people were changing their travel plans. We were having to void checks. It was becoming a lot of work. So we've removed all of the advances. So that wording has changed. I updated the per diem, the meal expenses on page 2 of the policy with the new rates. Also, I did look up the state of Iowa mileage is still at 39 cents, which is what ours is. So I'm leaving that the same, where the federal rate is 53.5 cents. So I went ahead and just left it as is, since the state hasn't lowered theirs or increased theirs. We're
Thank you.
in line with what the state's doing. And then at the end of the policy, we added a travel checklist to try to help people fill out the forms, just give them some helpful hints, receipts.
Always.
We do per diem on the meals, which is nice. That's made accounting's life a lot easier, but hotel receipts, that type of thing we need to have. So does anybody have any questions on that?
Can I have an advance?
No. Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you, Steph.
He gets
We've
on
got some,
Fireball.
well, you know,
Yeah.
figured I'd corner her right away. We got some public hearings set for August 21st. The first is consideration of an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Burlington, Iowa by amending the standard penalty for violation of city code. B is consideration of plans and specs for the 2017 Vineyard Street Area Drainage Project. C is consideration of plans and specs for the 2017 Jefferson Street Parking Improvements. And D is consideration of sale of property locally known as 914 Louisa Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Mr. Teslin, you don't have anything to add to that or anything? Okay. All right, first discussion item is Treasurer's Report.
Oh, this is good. You have issues, man.
Hi.
Hello.
The preliminary June's Treasurer's Report was in your packet. Note I said preliminary.
Preliminary,
This is going
yeah.
to change a lot over the next couple of months because we're accruing everything back, get everything back into the right time frame. So that'll be revenues, expenditures. But on the positive side, the two things that I know Jim kind of asked me about was the deficit accounts. If you look, you don't see those at the Recplex or golf course anymore.
Deficit
they're
accounts.
Like the
How
other.
big were those not too long ago?
Yeah, so if you're looking through, the other two that are on here is vehicle maintenance and property maintenance, and those are our internal service funds, so those will clear up by the time we're done with June. But again, we're just starting the long process of getting to the end of June.
Questions?
I have to make a comment. We said we were gonna work on getting rid of these deficit accounts 5+ years ago.
Say it.
This is a big deal to me, folks, that these deficit accounts are no longer there. So thank you,
Thank you, Jim, yes.
thank you, Steph. This is a big deal.
Okay, thank you
Thank
too.
you,
You were a
Council.
driver on that bus.
Thank you, council.
That's right. That's right.
Well done.
And now becomes incumbent upon those of us that might be here in the future to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Amen to that.
I'll second that motion.
Amen.
Good job.
Thanks.
That's
Thank you.
good. All right. Man, that does feel good, doesn't it?
It's great.
All right. Jefferson Street improvements. Micmac.
Have these on the computer maybe, if they're the same thing, yeah. Can switch to the computer screen. Grab Stephanie, if we could switch to the computer here.
Well, staff met again, went over with the DPI and police and parks and forestry and everything, just to make one last look at this. It's a fairly simple set of plans, essentially moving the back of curb enough to be able to create parking spaces. If you want to go to the next, I don't really like this view. So what we're creating is we're creating similar parking style to what we have on the rest of Jefferson, parallel and then diagonal. And if you want to hit the last slide, show what it looks like over the aerial, the current aerial. So what will happen is the planter boxes will get removed. There's some utilities underneath there that'll get taken out. It's about 22 spots. And then they will essentially pour new parking, a new curb. Our goal is to not try and get into any of the exposed ag.
So pick up how many new parking places then?
22, I think, was the number
22?
that I had. The estimate, I think previously that I gave you was like 56,000. The estimate on this, now that's more fine-tuned, is 60 to 70. There's some hesitation on going out to bid because there's an event going on that'll be in that area fairly heavily at the end of September. That being said, is there anything about these prior to going to public hearing that you want to see changed? I think the one thing that maybe wasn't talked about in detail was in front of PD, we're going to try and do some ballards, some concrete ballards for protection.
That's good.
And then we're tackling some ADA things that probably weren't on the initial plans. Some on Main and then over off of 3rd Street, so. They're fairly basic plans.
We need those spots.
So I know that there's a big push to get the parking spots, and I would agree.
Also wanted to make sure that you had an idea of what this looked like. You gain a lot of street parking in that area, but that means that you also have the loss of the park-like space in there too. People need to understand that for what you gain, you have to lose something in there.
And there's still the plan to try and put back, not planter boxes, but some sort of and Eric maybe could attest to this better than I can.
I was going to ask if there was any way.
The street trees that are in the surface level, sidewalk level parking, especially on the north side where the sidewalk is larger, continuing that in the.
That you'll be able to keep the street.
Yeah, some of the trees will be able to be kept that are already at the sidewalk level. All the planters will come out, but the sidewalk level trees on the north side will be able to stay, and then at some of the intersections or alley areas, there may be able to be additional trees there as well.
I'm comfortable with it.
And they'll never be as big as the trees that were previously there. I don't think that those trees were massive.
Yeah.
You'll never see something like that again, just because those are too big.
Too big.
The primary business that I can think of that loses use of the space in front of them is a bean counter for who's who's using them for
Currently have some
outdoor seating. So that's gonna have to be modified, and you have to know that that's gonna be an impact on them. At the same time, they're getting more
parking.
Yeah. So hopefully they can see the benefit for it, but you need to understand that those are the kind of things that you may get some
There is more walking
pushback.
path available now, though, because there's a fairly large planter outside of that business that you would now create walkability through. And so there is, I don't know the dimensions to be able to comment, but you could do a street cafe or sidewalk cafe is the proper term.
Fortunately, they're one of the businesses that have been in to see some of the preliminary plans. They're one of the ones that have been up front and knowing what's going on, so.
You're gonna try to save the rock in the planters, or?
Our goal is to try and save that limestone. It's fairly expensive rock. We could just put it back in storage behind Public Works until we find a more suitable purpose for it.
Good deal.
Good job.
So the businesses in that area have been contacted and you haven't heard anything from them?
We haven't contacted them yet, but we're gonna try and minimize what they will see for the most part. we should be able to go in there, take out the planter boxes, and then make curb cuts to be able to remove the area while keeping the sidewalk open. And hopefully maybe some functioning of hours may help that as well.
You also have this is one of the consent items to set in a public hearing, and your time process there is to try to award bids by the end of
Early.
August?
And then by award, it'd be, I think it was September
September.
11th.
And are you firm on doing that?
I have some hesitation, just because it's getting later in the season, and by the time you would start construction, you'd be probably towards the event that's down there at the end of September. You'd probably talk more early October. Now, you can do concrete work as long as, isn't sub-zero for a fair amount of time. I feel like you could still get the work done, but
Would you feel better if you changed even if you award contracts this fall, to have it be for spring
the
work?
spring project, it probably would be easier on getting things done, not trying to shove everything into the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I know that we had talked about this early on in the year, about getting it out and having it be a summertime project, but I don't think we fully realize the workload that some of these projects like Agency Street and the roundabout have become, so.
Right on.
So,
Right on.
we could still go out to bid, see what bids we get.
You could
and-
also have a time, I don't know what your thoughts have been, because we're kind of like just talking about this. Bid it with a construction start for after, you're wanting to have it be after Cannonball Run, whatever that is.
Fireball Run.
September
Fireball
26th and 27th is the event.
After
now.
that, but have a close date next spring, so that they could have the flexibility to do work this fall or next spring.
Correct, and we may try and get some, I haven't talked this out yet, but try and get some of the removal done yet this fall. So, I think it's still worth maybe going to public hearing as the plans and specs, and then being able to go out to bid.
Well, the goal was to have it ready for when the police department's ready, right? So
Correct.
We should be okay then.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Next, we have Great Places Grant Project Identification.
All right, Charlie.
We've been designated as a great place by the state of Iowa, and that program.
Because we are?
Yeah, well, they recognize unique places throughout the state of Iowa that really signify what the town is about, or they give a unique sense of place. And with that comes the public recognition, but also the opportunity to apply for project funding every year. There are grant funds available. The average grant award is $185,000. There is a match requirement there. It's a 1-to-1 match, but we might possibly be able to use some of our riverfront funds as that match. But we have to send in a notice of intent by tomorrow saying that we're looking at doing these 3 projects for this funding cycle. We're not committing ourselves to those 3 projects, but we're narrowing down our list of projects to 3 before we pick one final project to apply for. And all of the projects are based on the riverfront plan we put together as part of our flood mitigation project. That's what we applied for the Great Places designation with. And so we put 5 projects on our Facebook page and started a poll to ask people what they wanted to see on the riverfront in the next few years. And we had an amazing response. We had over 1,000 votes, which is the most votes we've had on any poll. Our comprehensive plan had 1,100 votes for comparison. We had more here. So this is far and away the most successful public engagement, at least poll we've ever had. And the results are in. We closed the poll today. We had 52% vote for the splash pad. The amphitheater seating and event space was second, with shade structures and seating coming in third. Then visitor boat docks, and I think 7 or 8 people voted for wayfinding signage. So what I need from you is a statement or some direction saying, okay, let's put in our notice of intent for these 3 projects, and then we can decide later which one project we want to apply for funding for.
You have no official decision you can make tonight, but you can say if you're okay with letting him go ahead, and are you comfortable, or is it going to be a showstopper for him to submit based off of the 3 highest scores? This is for this year's cycle, as he's
Right.
mentioned. You have the ability, if we don't receive funding from something in this cycle, next year you'll have the same process of being able to identify, but you're still limited based off of why we were awarded the Great Places designation.
The grant program required planning work to be done in a targeted area, and we had that planning work done for the downtown riverfront.
So it has to be into the downtown riverfront, and it has to be one of the projects that was identified in that process.
Yes.
So there, even though you can modify what you select for a project, there isn't a lot of wiggle room for what can be done from kind of what the list that he's put up there.
I'm for turning you loose, man. I see what you can do. What about you guys, Timmy?
This,
I'm not, I don't want to see us move on it this quick this year. If we can go further, because I don't think that, overall, it's going to be a popular project, the riverfront improvements as a whole, and in particular, the splash pad. I know everybody wants one, but when it comes time to pay for it, we're putting out $40,000 or $45,000 a year. We've got a discussion on Memorial Auditorium later tonight that's, people are very upset that we're paying $300,000 to $400,000 a year in tax dollars to support. And I don't know, I'd like to have more time for people to absorb this, and then honestly, the first time I knew that there was an online vote on anything or recommendation or whatever was today. I think it's a little quick, 24 hours to make a decision. It's just, I don't think good business.
Yeah. The poll has been up for a week, but I understand the quick turnaround here. And we wouldn't be, so if we put in this notice of intent, we don't have to apply for a project. But if we don't put a notice of intent in, then we're not able to apply for a project once the grant cycle opens up.
So we limit ourselves to the 3 projects that we.
Right, you limit yourselves to the 3 that you put in the notice of intent for.
And then at the later point, you can just say, no, we don't want to do this, so we refuse the grant. Can we do that?
Actually, you're not applying for a grant now.
Nope, this isn't a grant application. It's the first step to it. And we wouldn't have to apply for the grant. We do have the chance every year to apply for the grant.
Okay, but that wasn't my point. The point was, assuming you receive the grant, at that point, we can say, no, we don't want it for one of these particular 3 items. Is that true?
We could do that, yes. If we received it, we could say we were giving the money back, we don't want to go forward.
Yeah, but if this money that we're getting is going to be used toward the riverfront, stuff that we're already got planned to do. So yeah, again, I don't like everything on that list, but I can fine tune it when the time comes, because I do think we're gonna need some shade structures with seating. I'm all in for that. Visitor boat docks, we're gonna have to deal with that issue. So to me, I'm like, go ahead and send in paperwork and let's see what they send back. That's where I am. Are there 2 other people like me?
No, I like the idea of going ahead and sending it, but I'm with Councilman Scott. I have never been in favor of splash pad, and I probably never will be unless somebody really.
I'm not a splash pad fan myself,
comes
but
up with some money for it to do it.
I do like shade structures and seating, and.
When is an actual application, when's that supposed to be done?
September.
So at that point, if you're moving forward, you would be doing you would have to be selecting which project do you want to go forward with. I understand the ongoing costs with the splash pad. If it may be that if you have over the next month and a half or so, as you're trying to figure out what project to do, if that is not what is wanted, but you've listed the 3 projects, if you were to do the seating and shade structure, that's a passive thing that you're looking at on the east side of the auditorium. Is that correct? I don't know the area.
Yeah, they've been identified on both the west and the east side in our plan.
That would be something that if you did do, it would be a passive cost that didn't have an ongoing type of cost. So you could look at, if you have some time to weigh which one you want to submit a final project for, but you are at this point limiting down to just 3 options that you could consider
For
in
this
September.
pass, for this, right.
We'd have some time to look into the maintenance costs of splash pads versus the other options too in the month between when we did our notice of intent and grant application.
Are there two other people on this council that have no problem with them moving forward, at least to see if we can get some money on this?
Me.
First,
You're in?
Yep.
what are we committing to if we move it? We're not
You're not,
committing to anything.
tonight you're not, but I think that if you get to next month and you are going to submit a grant application, if you do submit that grant application, you should be intending to try to follow through if you're awarded funds. And that might be the spot that you say, no, we don't want to submit this
Right,
grant application, but that also means, Chuck, you need to get this done.
Okay.
But I know that you have more time then to do it than what you do right now, because this first month process, they gave us an announcement and said you need to tell us back in a week and a half that you are willing to do this, and
Right.
you've had very limited timeframes to do stuff.
Mhm. It's been a quick turnaround. Fortunately, we're not locking ourselves to anything if we put in our notice of interest. It's just the state wanted us to identify 3 projects that they could evaluate it for eligibility, and then we can move forward later.
I'm good for go ahead and do it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, we're not committing to anything really.
Thank you, Charles.
Thanks for all your work you've done.
What this guy said, 2 times, doubling down.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you, sir. Number 5, Memorial Auditorium.
All right, I guess I get to start on this one, based off of, in your packet, you have a 3-page memo from me, which is way too long to go through. But I did want to kind of go, that at budget session, this was one of the topics that came up to look at over the course of this year. And as you start thinking about what you're doing with what you think the future of the auditorium is, and that first paragraph that I put in there was really about keep in mind and keep in perspective all the events and groups that use that facility and what it means to the community as you make a decision here. How do you potentially impact any of them that are part of it? With that said, out of the 7 items that you can do, you can continue to operate as we are with Venue Works. We're 3 years into a contract. It's a 5-year contract, but after the 3rd year, July 1, we have the option of terminating the contract essentially at any time as long as we give 120 days notice. That being said, if you were to do that, I would encourage you to be respectful about the events that they're looking to schedule over the course of the next year, as well as any other events that are being scheduled by other folks, to make sure that you don't if you do something different, that you don't do something that negatively impacts the commitment that they have made.
Right.
That being said, the other options that you could look at, purely selling the area. Well, given the way that the land was granted to us from the federal government, that becomes fairly impractical, which I kind of highlighted in there. You could lease the site, whether that's leasing the building itself or leasing the land, allowing someone else to demo the property or use it however they're going to, put their own structure on it on a long-term basis, which would be comparable to what's done with the Big Muddy site. We own the land. We have a long-term lease arrangement with, I want to say it's Weingard, but
Standard. Standards operated.
okay. And then they sublease then to the operator of the restaurant. There could be something that was envisioned to do something comparable to that. Now that avoids the land sale issue, but it does not avoid other commitments that we've made over time. We've had the funds that were received from the state back in 2005 to do a whole host of projects totaling a little $4.5 million. Put a restriction on that land and on that facility through 2026. It is, I think, 20 years from the completion of all the agreements. For us to do something that would lose property there would require the approval of the state along with it. It's hard to get approval for what-if scenarios. Now, if you were to develop a scenario of what you're looking to see happen there, for example, you could be saying that we're willing to go out for development proposals where you saw the site, the existing facility disappear, but a new convention center go up in its place. You may be able to go to the state and say, this fits within what the auditorium was designed to do. This is a modification, I mean, significant modification, but it doesn't eliminate what the original project was designed to do. And petition them to say that that's acceptable. They may or may not agree with that, I don't know. But it's hard to bring, we can't take something to them unless there's really an interest in seeing something brought forward to them. With that in mind, if they under any scenario that changed the structure, could be saying that you owe us back a portion of the money, whether it's the $4.5 million overall dollars that they provided to us, or the $1,500,000 that was specifically for the auditorium itself. And it's potential that, given that you're 12 years down, or 11 years down the road, that there might be some pro rata share that could be discussed too. I don't know. But again, those are things that the only reason to bring up with the state is if you were actually moving down them. What are my other options that I have in here as I'm doing this? 3, consideration of other entities coming in and operating the facility for the city instead of VenueWorks. An example of that that we went through 3 years ago, we didn't have anyone else who submitted back then, but I think that there was, at least when we talked with Steamboat Days, some what-ifs that were just brought up in those discussions that were never pursued. And maybe there would be a what-if scenario such as that could be pursued at this time. I kind of talked about 4, which is redevelopment. Perform a sale of the existing facility to another entity while maintaining ownership was number 2. One of the things with that one, as we've gone, you may have a group of nonprofits here that might have an interest of saying, we want to have the facility, we're willing to take over. I don't know that this is really that likely or not, but you may have some nonprofits who say, we want to have this spot that we can have either our own group, just one group, or have several groups who say, together we want to see this space used for us, and we're willing to take it over. I think you still run into the same limitations from the state there if it's not a true community facility. It's again, the later 2, they had to do with the idea of going back to either a scenario similar to what we did before, where we were operating the facility, or operating it ourselves under a much more streamlined process. Stephanie kind of put together a list of the financial, or a page of the financials, what our revenues and costs have been over the last several years. As you look on that sheet, back in fiscal year 11, 12, 13, it was under city management. Was it 13 that was a crossover year with VenueWorks? So it had a part of ours and part of theirs. FY11 was the last year where we were really truly staffing that agency. We were short-staffed in some positions that came open in fiscal year 12 that we didn't fill. And then they were open too into 13 as we transitioned from us over to VenueWorks. So a net cost, the last true full year of real net cost for us was fiscal year 2011, where we were at $340,000 net loss. Now, that's not showing, as you look at the revenues versus expenditures, The revenues up above are 157,000, and the expenditures were 411,000. The difference between those is not the 338,000, but what I backed out of the revenues there, property taxes. Those are property taxes that we collected specifically to do the auditorium, so they're not revenue generated by the auditorium. We could be collecting, instead of property taxes there, we could be collecting property tax, the same property tax amount to support other city operations. So that includes not just the general property taxes, but the delinquents, the utility replacement tax, and then in later years, the replacement backfill are all into that formula. That's why your actual revenues that are generated by the facility, for example, in 2011, were $72,000. And that's what was subtracted off of the $411,000 of cost. Those are done in all years. Now you can look as we switch from our last full year of operating it ourselves in 2011, that you had full staffing with a net loss at 340. The first year under Venue Works, actually that's the first full year. Was given the wrong year on that, wasn't I, Stephanie? The first full year would have been 14. Their cost was $340,000 net loss. The next year is $424,000, and I think that a big part of that was the elevator. That was 14. So big. Yeah, that was 116,000.
116,000, yeah.
So the net loss there, 460,000, where it was significantly higher, was, I love having not being able to do this well. So the net loss that year, if you were to back out the elevator, would have been more in the 350 range. 340 in 15, 420 last year, 404 for the year that we just ended. So our costs essentially have gone up with Venue Works running it. And part of that has to do, you've lost revenues in the rentals. You're not having the same usage by weddings and other types of events like that. We have had a few more events that have occurred there, which is really kind of what the goal was to have more events when we entered the contract. Now, we definitely have not seen the amount of events increase that we had hoped to see. For this next year, the original budget that we had with Venue Works is for a net loss for this coming year of $360,000. They haven't hit their budget in any of the years that they've been operating. They've consistently underperformed on revenues. And I would anticipate that that would be the case as we move into this next year too. But the two options for us to run it, which Nick will kind of go over pros and cons on, you can see net cost for us to staff pretty much on a fully staffed basis. Has a net loss of $395,000. More of a minimal staffing would have a net loss of $110,000, and he can kind of talk about what those two options are. Now, as we say, the net loss for the city to run it at that $395,000, we're looking at 3 full-time staff, and we just put in numbers that were based off of all 3 having family health insurance. The difference between family and single is
astronomical,
over $10,000 a year. So if you had, for example, 3 single policies that were actually there, the net loss would be $35,000 lower. But we wanted to make sure that we had it, we're showing it.
Worst case.
Yeah.
I just want to say this real quick. This is nothing against Venue Works or any of that. I was ready to start Take It Back last year. I'm ready to see Burlington take it back. And to me, the auditorium obviously isn't about making a ton of money, but I'll tell you what, I like the way it ran a whole lot better, and I think we took better care of our locals and our local groups when Burlington was running that. And that's what I'd like to see, less headaches with the normal programs that we've got. And I'm ready to cut ties with VenueWorks. I'll be right back, but I just want to throw that out there.
And as Nick goes to talk about these other two options, VenueWorks is willing to have a discussion about modifying how their contract is done as well in this process. And I think you can at least give some level of
Correct.
overview of that.
I'm gonna switch over to the computer here.
So as Jim said, I took a look at, if you want to go to the next page for me, took a look at two options, kind of the city-run full staffed, and then the very minimally run. So the city operated where we would hire 3 full-time. One would be the booking rental position. The other 2 would be a laborer, one a laborer 2, one a laborer 1. The laborer 2 would function as a lead. This function would run similar to the way we do now, other than the fact that we wouldn't have anybody going out and getting the big time shows, the kind of the ones that have always been there. But the added role would be running the Port of Burlington and the depot as far as function. Some of the benefits on that, it would shift some of our port reservation duties. Currently, my port reservations are done in Public Works. And so that would free up a fair amount of time from some of my staff. It would have a reduction in some of the outside cleaning at the depot. I don't think we fully realize what the costs are of cleaning that place, especially as it goes through a winter time with that much square footage of flooring. We've added 4,000 square foot of maintenance. Currently, we have Hope Haven clean the bathrooms and what was the former lobby area, but I don't think we fully realize what those costs are. And I think some staff in the auditorium could help swing over and take a look and reduce some of the cleaning costs. It could also eliminate some of the property maintenance hours at the auditorium, port, and the depot. And then some reduction in time during steamboat days for property maintenance. And then also eliminate some of the cleaning services during steamboat days. Currently, we hire that out while Steamboat Days when VenueWorks is out of the building and Steamboat Days has it, we hire that out and go clean in. If you'd hit the next one. The second role or the second function that I looked at was more of a caretaker role where we wouldn't hire any additional staff. It was more of a function of property maintenance to go in and do the occasional check on the building to make sure that everything is okay. I wouldn't say that this is shuttering necessarily. I would say that this is more a very minimally run building. I don't think that it was a wise decision to completely shutter it. If you do, the cost in bringing it back online would be very expensive. So this is and Stephanie put a budget together on it's still going to be $120,000 a year to operate that facility for utility costs. We would drop down the heat in the winter and cooling in the summer.
At the same time, we're making some guesses as to what we can do here. As you start thinking about all the different events that do go on or groups that are using it, we still have to bring the heat on back up and down. Air conditioning has to be brought up and down.
Correct, and that fluctuation is costly versus just keeping it at the same consistent temperature. So some of the things that you see as a reduction are utilities, janitorial, cleaning, and some of the minor equipment that's necessary for the facility. It puts a little bit of a strain on property maintenance, more so than what it currently does. Should they have a major need if they have a major need in the building, property maintenance is called, but VenueWorks is the first to respond to an issue. So I think that's the last slide I had. So those are the two city options that I ran through as far as a staffing level. I guess I don't know what else to talk about. I'll let that go back to Jim.
Nick,
Go ahead.
how much impact do you think the rentals are because of the restrictions we have down there about what can be brought in and not?
Yeah, Braden and I have had that conversation because VenueWorks runs that, and does the rentals for weddings and other events dip down. I would say that they have. I mean, it's fairly obvious that it's not used as much anymore for rental purposes. Now, the question would be, if it were returned to city hands, could you see that increase? And I say that you probably would or could, but to the extent that it was prior to, I don't know that you could say that. I mean, there's more venues that are online now.
One of the things that we brought up, or that your staff brought up, was a Barn on the Ridge. Is that the right name?
Yes.
That's a new venue that is on the market. Now, that might not be exactly the same market as we are, but it is a new facility that takes 40 weddings, I don't know, I assume in that neighborhood a year. And it shifts all other weddings around too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that they've gone from the auditorium out there, but as you have markets switch around, people are going to be looking at having more options that are available to them. And our pricing structure, we did the increase to it. Just back in 2012, when we were going through right sizing on the budget,
Right.
we did a significant increase to rentals
Yeah,
there.
I understand that. I'm just speaking from experience, looking for a place to hold an event. The price wasn't an issue for me, but what you could not bring in.
I think there's parameters on catering.
That was an issue.
Yeah, and we would take those off. Now, one of the changes that we wouldn't change, as we went through the process of doing a contract and looking at language that was within it and realizing what we were doing or allowing to have happen in our facilities, we realized that we were exposing ourselves to some significant liability with allowing folks to bring in alcohol
Right.
that
I
wasn't
understand that.
done through a proper process.
Yeah, that's-
So that was not to do with Venue Works.
Right,
It was
that's not
just
a
at
good-
the same time.
right, that's not a good thing. I agree with that.
And that's a function that would have to be a conversation, if it
Yes.
were to be city staffed, would be the operation of a liquor license, and would that be done through the city ourselves, or finding another entity to share that responsibility with?
Previously, Steamboat Days had done all the liquor provisions.
That's right.
This is a little bit harder. I mean, we've run into this with the port building. There isn't a significant amount of profit for them in operating for a very small group to have alcohol at their event, but we have to do that. Somehow we have to have somebody with a license who's providing it.
Do I read this correctly, though? Anticipated 2018, account 519, $706,000. That's if we don't make a change, is that right?
Yes.
Under expenses.
Yeah, and
That number seems off, though.
personnel's, professional services. Their overall cost at $919,000. They haven't been up that high, but I think as Stephanie's done this, you're making some estimates off of their budget
Boy.
and trying to make sure that we had enough. But we haven't hit that in the past.
Right, no. You can see the revenues are higher than what they did in the past too.
Yeah.
That's something Nick didn't talk about, was it maybe an adjustment in professional fees with Venue Works? Did you talk about that?
Nick, this last week you had a conversation with Venue Works. Would you kind of?
I had a conversation with Steve, forget his last name, the president of Venue Works. And he saw it was on the agenda and was concerned, and I told him exactly the reason why we were having these conversations, because we were having the budget conversations. And I kind of explained to him some of the options that we were gonna lay out. And he did mention that he would be interested in taking a contract and maybe scaling it down from where they're at and trying to go in after some of the big shows, and do more of a kind of a minimally run auditorium. I don't know what that means as far as money. That would be something we'd have to take back to Steve, if that's something you would want to look into.
Not me.
Well, if we were gonna do a minimally run, I'd just assume we did it ourselves rather than pay somebody else to minimally run it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like that idea at all anyway. The minimal, it doesn't sound, it's not gonna be efficient, it's not gonna be good for the community, for it to be minimally run at all. Whether it's us or somebody else.
It's a big deal to the community. A lot of people depend on the auditorium. A lot of groups depend on the auditorium, a lot of events, a lot of venues. Yeah, again, I would just, yeah, I already said what I had to say before I slipped out.
I really think our city minimally run expenditures are too low, just looking at it. I think that we discover it was hard to have our expenditures be that low, because you're gonna have, if you were to go into that scenario, you're still gonna have groups who are pushing to get use on it, and it'll be difficult to get it shuttered to where you only have 10,000 or 12,000 of our personnel costs going into it, and property maintenance costs at the level that is shown in there.
That doesn't seem like much.
So, I don't think we'll see that much of a savings, but it will still be would still be a significant savings, but limited service too.
But it would accommodate your Snow Bowl and your civic music,
Yep.
and those things would not ever go away. It's just that,
Maybe we'd open up more doors too, back to a little bit more of the renting purposes too that we used it for, but,
You would lose, that does not get you some of the side benefits. There are some cost savings with some of the side benefits that Nick presented in just taking a city-run facility. We would be saving money on, Service Master has been doing the cleaning. Some of the billable hours of property maintenance puts into Steamboat Days. Some of the costs that they have running the depot, running a port, are reflected in here, would be reduced in other areas, and we don't have a good hard and fast number for what that would be. But 20 to 30,000 anyway, I think would be probably a reasonable number overall. And the flexibility it gives to his property maintenance and to your staff out at Public Works would be truly appreciated from them. It's not necessarily a cost savings, but as much as it is some flexibility savings for other things.
again,
Yeah,
I
I'd only be comfortable with, continuing to make sure that it runs, whether it's through another service or whether we decide to take it back, but we're gonna do it right and do it full-time. Those are the only two options that I think we really have.
it's a good point, but what I'm looking at is, so the fire department gets a SAFER grant, and it's gonna cost us, what, 80-some thousand the first year?
That's a budgeted amount for the first year, because we have the one staff position, but
Right.
the point being, by the time you get to the fourth year and you have 6 positions that you're now funding.
Right.
And so where's that money gonna come from? And so I'm looking for ways, 100,000 here, 100,000 there, you know?
Well, yeah, I
you know.
agree completely, but running it at a minimum, that's the 12,000, that'll end up going up
Yeah.
because of unforeseen
Right.
overtime. I mean, that's
Sure.
that's definitely not a
Well,
realistic
But then you'd
minimum.
hope to make that up in increased revenues.
But I don't
offset
think
that.
when it's run at a minimum, there are not gonna be increased revenues, because it's not gonna be run very well. It's not gonna be a service people are gonna be out to look for. That's just hopefully we'll be able to keep, the ones that always use it, whether it's the Snow Bowl or Civic Music, but if it's not a facility that they can use, they will find other ways.
It won't be designed to be there for a meeting space for things that come up during the course of the year. It'll be designed to way more for the things that are the major users of it that have been there for.
My conversation with a lot of the groups and people that have used the auditorium in the past and want to continue to use it, they feel a lot better with it going back to the city's hands and moving away from Venue Works. That's what I got.
At what level?
At what level of running it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's I think we can get some debate in that, but I think we can find a happy medium where everybody's happy.
How do we define
And
the
still-
difference between
still
the
step
city
down from some of those
minimum
costs.
proposal versus the way we used to do it?
Well, the way we used to do it was really the first example there, where you have 3 full-time staff.
Okay,
And they are housed down there and available.
right.
That minimum is more of, you have property maintenance who's overseeing it, similar to how the port is being done now, where they're probably gonna be hiring part-time staff, which is what we do down at the port, to do some set up and tear down, along with property maintenance. So as property maintenance, the regular people there are doing the setup and tear down. Their time is allocated to that, and you see that in their property maintenance charges, but if you hire some part-time help to assist with those duties, their salaries would be up there in that $12,000 number above. I think that probably those are the 2 areas that I think are probably a little under budgeted here.
Under-budgeted.
And that just being the nature of how do you get yourself to forcibly get down to, we're only gonna do these 10 identified things. If you
Right.
get down to the 10 identified things, or whatever that list is of what we're gonna allow there, and no one else uses it, I think you can run it the way that that's shown there. I just don't think you're gonna be there. I think it's gonna be somewhere, if you go to a minimum staffing, it's gonna be somewhere between there and the full staffing level.
But if we run a full-time city, then that lead person becomes really a crucial position. You
I
gotta
think
find
we-
the right person for that.
I think we need to find some good working hands, like the halfway house, that need something to do. So I think stack up chairs. I'll talk to you about that later. You know, there's a community that's doing that. They're about to lose a venue, and they went back to community service instead of for staffing for events. It's working.
We've done it in some spots, sometimes successfully and sometimes not. You know, we've had things where we've had that type of labor where we've tried to rely on and had no-shows, or I think that's probably been the biggest issue, is no-shows.
Well, so where are they going?
Then the other, pursuing some local organization that might want to give it a shot seems like a good alternative, like your Steamboat Days Board, or even your Snowball Board, or whomever, you know,
We had good staff that was working down there. I know, well, I just think we just need to inquire and explore, but are we on the same page that VenueWorks isn't going to be able to continue down there? Is everybody?
I'm not ready to say that right now.
Okay.
No, I'm certainly in favor of doing something different than VenueWorks, because it's not working out as we had hoped for. They've had 3 years. I think for me, it's time to move on from there and try something different. And I like Nick's idea of having a person operate the auditorium, take care of the port and the depot as well. And I think we've got some opportunity to bring in additional income with all 3 of them, and in particular the depot. We need to be, I think, a little more aggressive in letting people know that that's available. We should be doing it hot and heavy right now, because we're running out of space in the downtown for retail and business. And if we're willing to make investments like the private investors are, I think we can see a return on that investment. So I think I'm definitely concerned about the operating cost. I think there's potential for income to offset that, the losses, and on a long-term basis. We just need to pursue it. We need to let them know it's available. We need to let them know the council's willing to spend money on making some improvements to the depot, for example, to get some activity in there. God knows we've tied our own hands by accepting grants, and if that's the case, then we need to step it up and not let that grant money go to waste, and not let the building go to waste. Let's try to capitalize on it.
I don't disagree with you, Tim. I don't disagree.
I would I agree with the mayor and I agree with Annie. We ought to be looking at it on a full-time basis and just try to make something out of it. And if that's not successful, then we gotta look at the other options.
Well, as I said, I'm just looking for, I look to here and say $400,000 and maybe it's only 200,000, so maybe we save $200,000, that's big money.
That's big money.
For,
Or we make $800,000 and keep the cost the same, then we're
That's-
$400,000 ahead.
That's
That's a goal. That's what you do in business. You set a goal and you achieve it. Go for it.
If you have control over it, but you
And I
don't
think if-
necessarily have control over it.
I think if we find the right people who realize that this is an asset for the community and are really, who live here, who have, an vested interest in this community, then they're really gonna work for it. Whether Venue Works does or not, that's on them, but if somebody lives here and puts their all into it, they're really gonna work hard at bringing a revenue in using the auditorium and the depot and the port.
We need some Merle Bryhol's DNA.
There you go.
Remember him, yeah?
Yeah, give me some of that stuff too. Merle Bryholz.
Merle Bryholz, he was coordinator.
Mr. Auditorium.
Used to bring in a lot of good acts.
Are you guys good for now then?
Well, what are we doing,
I don't know what direction we got.
I thought the direction was, are we stepping away from Venue Works? Is that
Venue Works is
July?
No, I think we still have
Ten
to,
shot.
we still need to have a discussion with them, just out of the goodness.
I guess I'd like to hear Nick
heart.
what he'd have to say, but if he's just gonna run on a minimal basis, I don't see why Venue Works why we should pay them to run a minimal basis when we could do it ourselves.
Oh, right.
I
Well,
don't
yeah.
get that, but.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, to me, that's our starting point, right?
You're talking minimum?
I think it would be worth it to have a discussion with them, just for the simple sake of having a discussion with them.
Yeah, I'm not interested
I
in
mean,
that.
I don't desire a discussion.
Not if the majority's talking minimal basis.
well, I don't, is that what they're saying? I mean, I think it's, I don't like the telephone. I don't like to play telephone.
I don't think Venue Works get the job done, but
Would you like at the very least for me to talk to Steve, Jim could too, but ask for a proposal on what that means and what that means monetarily?
Yes.
Would you like to at least see a proposal on what that is,
I
or?
think it's gonna be difficult for him to be able to do that if he doesn't know what he's trying to give a proposal for.
Yeah, here's a good point.
Well, I don't think we should ask him to propose minimal, because that's not what we want. I believe
No, I'm
that's
not
not what
looking for a
anyone wants.
proposal at all.
What
Well,
Annie-
I get that.
What I understand Annie wants, she wants him to come back and say, okay, we're gonna run the same program, just gonna charge you less.
Hey. No, I think it's fair to have somebody come back and
And it may be
try to.
that you could have a discussion with them about that.
A
about
defined
having a-
service level and
Yeah,
what that
because-
means from,
What they told us when we signed the contract was.
Maybe a genius.
It has not happened. So something needs to change, whether that means we give up on them or they come back with a little.
Yeah.
Something's gotta be different, because it's obviously not working.
I'm
Is that-
fine
is
with,
that bottom
I'm
line?
fine with that. That's bottom line for me. I'm good with that.
yeah, I'm good with that. I mean, they obviously haven't gotten the job done. I'm sure they're as disappointed as we are. I mean,
Well, we hope so.
and I also think getting these shows in here is not a simple task. It's not like, boy, we'll run it over and we'll bring in 20
Yeah,
more.
no,
I
I
mean,
agree.
we're dreaming if we think that's gonna happen.
I know that that Steve said many of the events that they've hosted recently have not been a success. They've not made money on those
Right.
events. And that probably has turned into what you've seen, so. Just communicating to what he said to me, so.
But, yeah.
Nick, where are you going so fast? All right, so. Where are we
Where are
then?
we?
Are we going to, you're gonna go back to Venue Works and have them come back here then? Is that what?
Well, just, just exactly what we just said.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked, we need to do something different. What can you bring to us that'll be different? If you can't, then we're going somewhere else.
I'm ready
But
to
no
go.
minimum.
But, all right.
No minimum run.
And we're just wasting weeks. Okay, Vineyard Street drainage.
Tried to tell you not to leave.
Annette, are you gonna come and talk to us on Vineyard Street? Oh, okay, Nick's gonna take care of it for you.
Thank you.
Keep divvying these out. These are
Absolutely.
surveys and responses.
This is an old,
Yeah.
this is an old.
Does it? Sweet, yeah, do it.
Vineyard Street.
So what you're, I, this is back to you guys. So what I'm gonna present and what you have in front of your hands is last Monday night, we had an open house at the library with the residents in the Vineyard Street area drainage. It was a project that was petitioned in 2015 due to drainage concerns in the area. So I'll go through this PowerPoint and then I'll kind of maybe address some of the questions that are in the end of that. And then I'll go over kind of the scope of what the project is, get some of your direction. We have set date next week for the plans and specs, so. Did I turn it on?
It went here.
What?
It went here.
No. Delay. We had a pretty good turnout last week. We had approximately 18 residents. Not all of them filled out surveys, but 18 people showed up to the event of the 65. Some of them are not homeowners or property owners that live in town, so I can see why they didn't show up. Okay, as I said before, this project background is something that came to us as a petition in August of 2015. It has now taken us 2 years to try and deal with the situation. It was a budgeted item in the amount of $313,500 based on a previous city engineer's estimate. Delay? Okay. So I will say that along here, you'll see this here in the upcoming images. Vineyard Street, along with the side streets, is a very flat area that is seal coat. And there's ditch working and culverts that have helped alleviate the water in the past, but there's problems essentially caused by filled-in ditches along with filled-in culverts or driveway tubes. So what we've done is we went in and we did survey work. That's what you see over to the right as you see a drone. We actually had several control points plotted out, and then we had a drone go in through and do aerial imagery. And I'm not going to play the video because I'm not going to mess with it. Maybe I won't even hit the whole full slideshow, just hit some of the pictures to kind of show the imagery of what the streets is, so that way I don't waste too much more time.
I saw him performing this, it was pretty awesome.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was relatively cost effective too. The video is pretty cool, I'll send it to you guys. and
They do
update.
some on Mount Pleasant too.
Is this a,
Yeah, they did, they flew Mount Pleasant for our Mount Pleasant Street overlay project that'll get lit out this winter. They flew this, flew this.
this is not a city-owned drone?
No, this is, they're out of Sperry. Might actually have the name on
Is that
there.
that little fly?
Yeah, that's what they drove, is they drove a drone like that.
Did they do the, are they the same ones that did the roundabout?
No.
Schmidt Golden was the other guy.
Nope, someone different. So as you can see here, I believe this is Vineyard, yep, it says the address is right there. As you can see, there's a fair amount of pooling of water that occurs at alleyways and driveways. There's supposed to be ditch working along there and culverts. And I think the complaint arose from some of this issue here that you see at the very bottom. If you would open up the last page, I think maybe, or go to the culverts. At the end of the day, we talked about this at the previous meeting, and I'll talk about it now. One of the biggest questions out there is the driveway tubes or the culverts underneath the driveways are, per our code, the homeowner's responsibility to clean, maintain, and replace. We are responsible essentially for the ones that go underneath the alleyways and the streets. So I put that question forward, and you can see that in the survey. I tried to gauge what their input was. There was a fair amount of support for, yeah, that's great. Thanks for bringing those slides. That'd be awesome. As you can see, the code is getting thrown up there, and it shows, kind of describes that the homeowner is responsible for all the repairs and the maintenance of it. And we went through kind of the pricing on what that means for property owners. $25 a foot for a 10-inch culvert, which is what we're planning on using. So if you have a 12-foot wide driveway, it'll cost approximately, and not only that, I should explain, 12 foot, but 2 foot on either side of the driveway, so there's plenty of clearance on the outside of it. That amounts to a $400 cost for that driveway tube. And so something that they discussed, and I'm gonna bring is who's bearing the cost of that driveway tube? Is it the homeowner in this case, or is the city gonna pick up the tab and pay for the driveway tube? If you'd go to the next one. I think it has a final cost. Oh, this just shows kind of an intake, one of the sample intakes, because there are some questions about that. I think that's the second to last slide, isn't it? I don't think Jesse put it on the slide. In the end, Jesse's engineering estimate was $275,000, and that does not include the driveway tubes. And as I mentioned before, the budget that was given to it was $313,000. So I guess some of the conversation we need to have is general direction on whether or not you want us to proceed with the way city code reads, or if you want to make an exception to this, how you want to go through on payment.
If we picked up all the cost, the overall project would come in more in the 335.
325 to 330, yep.
So we'd be a little bit over what our
Correct.
budget was for this project.
What was the budget? 313? Was it 3?
The budget was $313,500, and that was based
But-
on a previous engineer's estimate.
But even at that, that was based on the idea that we were picking up our portion of the costs, and the homeowners were picking up their portion of the cost.
And the
This-
homeowners are okay with picking up.
They don't want to if you look at the
It's-
survey results. If you see the survey results, most of the questions, you see a 3.5 to 4 on a scale of 1 to 5 approval of what's going on with the project, but when it came to picking up the cost, it's more like 2. They don't want, you have some who are willing to pick up the cost, but the majority of them are down on that one end of the scale, saying they don't want to pick up the cost.
And here's my point of view on that, council, if I can. On my street, where I live on 15th Street, I have curbs and gutters and there's storm sewers. And I don't have to pay for those except through property taxes. You live on 10th or Central or whatever it is, same thing's true for you, same thing on Mason Road, and same way out in Sunrise West. If something goes wrong with those, that cost is paid for through the property taxes. Culverts and ditches are part of the sewer system. It's a stormwater sewer system. It's the way that we get rid of stormwater. And that's what I had Ron Kanoki tell me, because I was on the other side of the issue back in the day. And he says, this is part of our stormwater system. This is how we get water out of the city and into the ravines and the lakes, or streams and the rivers. So, and I think that makes perfectly good sense. I mean, if it's part of the sewer system, then we ought to bear that, then the city ought to bear that cost.
Then we, in my view, then we can't just make this only for Vineyard, we have to do it the whole.
Change the code.
Have to
Absolutely.
change the code.
Oh, yeah. Change the code, I agree.
How many culverts are we talking about?
That's a good question. I don't have that answer. I will have that next week, when we have the plans not next week, the following week when we have the public hearing.
It's next week. Oh.
No, that's a set
They're
date.
just setting it.
So, $700, you said?
It's $25 a foot. There's some that are 12-foot driveways, there's some that are 20-foot driveways. I would be able to have Jesse work up a kind of an estimate on that. I think he maybe has that. I just didn't bring that tonight. I just wanted to kind of propose what had gone on last week, kind of their thoughts on things, and then kind of push that idea as to whether or not, what kind of direction we would head. Now, we are picking up the labor and the replacement of the driveway surface.
Yeah.
The cost that, under what we had presented, was the cost of the driveway tube and the culvert only.
I'm fine with it. You know, I'm fine with it. I was fine with it to begin with. The only reason I had pause was because that wasn't the only spot, you know, and when we get done with this one, there are gonna be other spots that other people are gonna want us to address, and the prices just keep climbing as time goes.
Exactly.
And it's not that I don't want it done, you know, it's just, what can we afford, and, you know, what can we afford now, and it's just, I just didn't wanna cause. But yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
If you're out on the corner of Summer and Maple, and you have a business there, and the water starts backing up in that.
Right on.
In that catch basin, we send somebody out from the city of Burlington, and they clean that out. They get it opened up, and the water flows into that catch basin. But if you happen to live on a street with a ditch and culverts, we just continue to let it grow in, and we ignore the issue. That's the way it's been for years. It's not the people that are here now running the show. It's just the way that we've done it for years. There's nothing wrong with correcting that, especially when you have the severe flooding that these people have on their properties on Vineyard Street.
And that's been an old problem in Vineyard,
All right, you had me at hello, all right. All right, what about the rest of you guys? Council lady? Nothing? All right.
Nothing.
Okay.
You expressed my hesitation at the very beginning, so I can't add anything to it.
All right. Jim?
Did you want an ordinance change brought forward to you?
I believe so. Didn't we all?
Yes.
Okay, we had a consensus on that. Okay, Mr. Tislin?
One thing I'm gonna add to the agenda, we approved the Parkview Care Center demo. We recently received approval from the DNR for asbestos funding. One thing, working with him on this contract, approved the contract, but he desires to self-bond in the full amount as allowed. Talking to our attorney, he wants that to come back to council to approve that through issuance of a check to the city instead of a performance bond. So I'm gonna be adding that so we can start to move forward with that.
So what you got? Okay. Antoinette? I know you got something. Lay it on us.
Well, of course, there's all kinds of fun stuff going on to keep you busy in Burlington, Iowa. Of course, we have Thursday Farmers Market. That's
Yes.
still going on.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna get down there this Thursday to see what all is down there now. I'm sure there's a ton of produce.
Oh, yeah, gotta get some of that.
Yes, and then one of my favorite places, the Capitol Theater, is having a free showing of all kinds of Shakespeare stuff that's put on by it's a Shakespeare Film Festival, basically, from the 3rd to the 5th. So that's gonna be fun. The double features on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the evenings. And then, of course, we have the municipal band concert on Sunday.
Yes, that's right. A lot of stuff going on in Burlington.
There's plenty more. but
That's
I
right.
won't-
Don't stay at home and sit on your couches. Get out and be somebody. Anything else? Okay, Counselor.
Council, they're going through the riverfront improvements, and one of the items that's going to be disturbed is the Statue of Liberty. And it's very near and dear to my heart. She was once crushed and I was part of a committee that put her back together again and put her down there. I don't want her put away in storage at all, actually, but I don't want it to last for a long period of time either. I would like to get something started that we find a place for her to find a new home for a second time. She was 60-plus years out in Dankworth Park.
How long have we had her?
Since 1950.
Man, that was the year I was not born. Thank you, Mr. Worth.
Or
I
concerns
think we
about?
were working to get her down today, or us slash S&G. She will need some refab, some sprucing if she were to go anywhere. She's a little rough.
Whoa.
Well,
I
she's
talked-
seen statue has seen
Jeez.
better days. She needs some
Yeah,
spikes
some
thrown on
spire's
her.
been taken off.
TLC.
I talked to Braden about possibly taking her back to Iowa City to that metallurgist that did the operation the last time. And getting to, when we brought her back, she looked like a brand new penny. She was just
Yeah.
as shiny as can be. And
Wow.
we screwed up by not putting the paste wax on her, and that's what he told us to do, and then we just never got around to it, and that to help keep her shiny. But I'll if no one objects, I will see if I can get a hold of them and get a hold of the committee and get a price and find out if we can raise the money again to get her all spiffed up again.
No objections here.
It's like the Tin Man in the Wizard of Oz. Is kind of what it's like.
Tim Man didn't have a heart, though. But anyways, go ahead, Tim.
And there is a couple of time capsules that I don't want lost or cracked open. They're supposed to be there for 100 years. So, let's make sure they get put back, they stay with her. The other thing, I saw something I couldn't believe. You know, after we spent $300,000+ in meeting the demands of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe for having a quiet zone. One of those things was Market Street at Main. We put in a right turn only when you're headed westbound. A Burlington Northern Santa Fe truck found it necessary to circumvent that and go right across railroad tracks and avoid all of that. And I was just shocked. I'm just shocked because Burlington Northern Santa Fe takes safety very, very seriously. And I couldn't get turned around fast enough to get the truck number and actually, I didn't even try to turn around, but I wish I had because I was dumbfounded all the way home, so. That's all I got.
Just want to say I made it to the, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. I had a constituent call about a project that was done at the parks that we approved payment for. It was a $6,200 expenditure, and he wasn't, he asked what that was for. I found out and explained to him what it was. He wasn't happy about it. I went out and looked at it. I'm not passing judgment, but I just want you to know that I don't think that's going to stop there, that I probably going to have to get the details on the cost of that, but I promised him I would mention that at the work session tonight, so.
Eric had something to say about that, Eric, didn't you, about that
Hello.
plantings there? Or just-
Yeah, it was
Just getting
area
ready
that
to
had
leave
fallen
here.
into disrepair. There was some stonework around there that some had been stolen, some had been fallen out and is eroding back, and
Where
a
you
lot
now?
of the land
Yeah,
eroding back on the backside. So we put in new planter areas there, being, I
Yeah.
guess, one of the most prominent areas in Burlington overlooking the Mississippi
Okay.
River. Have some new landscaping there that will take some time to grow in. But that was a project that we've scheduled for a number of years, but I can certainly look into the cost there too. We did get bids on it.
I'm not passing
Yeah,
judgment,
yeah.
I'm just passing along the
Yep.
information that I had. What's so funny?
Nothing.
Put your glasses on. Your turn.
Just want to say, happy retirement to Dale Allison. Got to get down to the Capitol Theater and spend a little time with him. It was a really good time. And also, they had boots and badges this weekend. It was a fantastic game. It was a fantastic day. And beautiful Burlington, Iowa. And I don't know what the final score was, who got whipped, but I know it was a good time. And the Cops won?
Yeah, all three.
We've got a cop telling us the Cops won all three, so anyways, I'm gonna take your word for it. So the Cops put the smackdown on them, all three.
Was your daughter pitching?
She's a ringer. Anyways, but yeah, that was always a good time. Good to see supporting the community when we come together. That's always good to see. Man, I had one other thing and I forgot what it was now, so it must not have been that important. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Fleming?
Nothing at this time, but
You reserve the right. You
I
always have
reserve
it.
the right to come back later.
City Manager? What do you want? Did we just say you?
I know, I'm up here all the time. Two things. Agency Street, just a reminder that this is a construction zone. Please be very careful. We did drop the speed limit down.
Oh,
Put some
thank you.
signs,
Thank
so at
you.
least people can understand that they should go a little bit slower. There was some fair amount of speed going through there. The roundabout, I don't know if you saw in the paper.
Yep.
I hadn't really announced it yet because I was kind of working out the details. But on Thursday, I'm going, myself and a couple of staff are going to go to the Sunnybrook Assisted Living, bring some of our posters and do kind of a public education piece.
Good.
But then we're going to the roundabout after that, and we've got a couple golf carts lined up from Flint Hills. Mr. Selby helped line that up. We're going to allow them to drive in the roundabout with golf carts. So.
I never got an email on that. How come
So-
nobody asked me in on any of that action?
This is your formal invitation to come to come see that. So
And that's gonna be when?
Thursday at 2 at the Sunnybrook Assisted Living. So whenever we're done there, we'll go out to the roundabout.
I just will.
And I don't
make sure you
want
send me an email.
everybody in town there, so
We should send us out an email on that.
I will send you out an email.
All right, sounds good. Nothing else? City Manager?
Just a reminder, league meeting, September 27 to 29 in Davenport. Is there anyone who has an interest in going to that?
Not I.
What day is that on?
Wednesday through Friday.
Oh, it's 2 days?
Wednesday through Friday. That's 3 days.
I've got a cold.
You be back from fire.
I was used to work at high school.
He does. Were you, either of you two wanting to go to that or no?
I don't think I'm gonna be able to. Not that I don't want to.
Okay. And that really don't have anything else.
Okay. Nothing else? Steph, you're good? Okay. The police is good? Fire's good. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.